In the heart of San Francisco's bustling financial district, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and secrets lingered in the shadows, renowned criminal defense attorney Daniel Graves built his empire. Known for his silver tongue and sharp mind, Daniel had a reputation for winning seemingly impossible cases. Yet beneath the tailored suits and charismatic smile lay a darker side. A compulsion that would ultimately lead him down a treacherous path. One crisp autumn afternoon, as leaves fell like confetti, a new client walked into his office. Emily Sanders, a striking 20-year-old with flowing auburn hair and piercing green eyes, was the daughter of a high-profile client embroiled in a high-stakes embezzlement case. She exuded an air of youthful naivety, yet her past hinted at a more complex story. Growing up in the shadow of her father's questionable dealings, Emily longed for independence and adventure, desperately seeking to escape her gilded cage. Daniel was immediately drawn to her, not just for her beauty, but for the vulnerability that flickered in her gaze. As they discussed the case, an undeniable chemistry crackled between them. They laughed, shared personal story, and for the first time, Emily felt seen beyond her father's shadow. Weeks turned into months, and the lines between professionalism and desire blurred. Their late-night meetings, under the guise of legal strategy, became laden with tension. Daniel was captivated by her spirit, and Emily found solace in his confidence. What began as innocent flirtation spiraled into a passionate affair, hidden away from the prying eyes of the legal world. But secrets have a way of unearthing themselves, and in this case, the stakes were dangerously high. As the trial approached, whispers of their relationship started to circulate. Daniel, usually so composed and calculated, found himself in a whirlwind of emotions, torn between his desire for Emily and the potential fallout of their liaison. On the eve of the trial, as rain poured down like a curtain of despair, Emily arrived at Daniel's office. Drenched and shivering, she looked vulnerable, yet fierce. "I can't do this anymore," she declared, her voice steady despite the storm raging outside. "If anyone finds out, it'll ruin you, ruin us." Daniel's heart raced. He had built his career on defiance, yet her words struck a chord of reality. "Emily, don't say it," she interrupted, her green eyes aflame. "You can't promise me anything, Daniel. This is my father's case, my family. I'm just a distraction for you." His frustration bubbled over. "You're not just a distraction. You mean something to me." "Do I?" she challenged, tears welling in her eyes. "Or am I just a means to feel young again, to escape your own demons?" The atmosphere crackled with unspoken truths and raw emotion. Daniel took a step closer, his heart pounding. "I want to make this work. I want you in my life." Emily's expression softened momentarily, but doubt lingered. "You say that now, but what happens when the trial is over? What happens when the dust settles?" The weight of her question hung heavily in the air. Daniel couldn't answer, and in that silence, the gravity of their situation sank in. As Emily turned to leave, a sharp knock echoed through the office. It was Emily's father, Robert Sanders, and with him, the threat of exposure loomed large. "Emily, we need to talk," Robert's voice boomed as he entered, the tension in the room thickening like fog. Daniel's heart raced. The timing could not have been worse. "Dad, I was just leaving," Emily replied, her voice betraying a hint of panic. "Not so fast. We need to discuss the trial strategy," Robert insisted, his demeanor authoritative. As father and daughter engaged in a heated discussion, Daniel watched, a sense of foreboding gnawing at him. Outside, the storm intensified, mirroring the turmoil brewing within. As Emily stepped out, Daniel caught her gaze one last time. It was a mix of longing and fear, a fleeting moment that spoke volumes. That night, as the rain lashed against the windows, Daniel lay awake, tormented by thoughts of Emily. He knew their relationship was a dangerous gamble, but the thrill of their connection was intoxicating. However, in the world of law, where stakes ran high, the game they were playing could lead to devastating consequences. Little did he know, the real danger was just beginning. The trial for Robert Sanders was set to begin in a matter of days, and tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Emily's unease grew as she watched her father navigate the courtroom with practiced ease, a facade of confidence masking the turmoil beneath. Daniel, meanwhile, felt the pressure mount with each passing moment. The stakes higher than ever. As the trial unfolded, the courtroom became a battleground. Daniel's defense strategies clashed with the prosecution's relentless pursuit of justice. Emily sat in the gallery, torn between her loyalty to her father and the whirlwind romance she had with Daniel. Each glance exchanged between the two lawyers sent her heart racing, but the constant presence of her father weighed heavily on her mind. During the trial's intermissions, the tension between Daniel and Emily intensified. They would steal away to secluded corners of the courthouse, exchanging hurried whispers and lingering touches. But the more they sought solace in each other, the more they danced on the precipice of disaster. Their affair, once a thrilling escape, now felt like a noose tightening around their necks. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of crimson over the city, Daniel invited Emily to his apartment under the guise of discussing trial strategy. The mood was electric, the air thick with unspoken words. They both knew that their affair could be exposed at any moment, yet they were drawn together as moths to a flame. "Daniel, we can't keep doing this," Emily whispered, her voice a mixture of fear and desire. "What if someone finds out? Then we'll face it together," he replied, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I won't let you go." As they succumbed to their passion, a sudden knock on the door shattered the moment. Daniel pulled away, panic flooding his senses. He opened the door to find Robert standing there, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" Daniel stammered, suddenly aware of how this looked. "I came to talk to Emily," Robert replied, stepping into the apartment, his eyes narrowing as they landed on his daughter. "You're not supposed to be here, Emily." The confrontation escalated quickly. Daniel felt the heat of Robert's anger directed at him, while Emily struggled to assert her independence. "Dad, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions," she protested. Robert's voice lowered menacingly. "You think you know what's best for you. This man is playing with your life, Emily. You need to stay focused on the trial." Daniel interjected, his frustration boiling over. "I'm not playing with her life, Robert. I care about her." "Care? Is that what you call it? You're a lawyer, not a babysitter. You think this is a game?" Robert shot back, his voice rising. The argument reached a fever pitch, leaving Emily caught in the crossfire. The tension culminated in a sharp exchange of threats, and Daniel realized that if Robert uncovered their affair, not only would his career be ruined, but Emily's future would also be jeopardized. That night, after her father left, Emily sat on the edge of Daniel's bed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't take this anymore, Daniel. I feel trapped," she sobbed. "Then we need to find a way out," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "If your father is standing in our way, we'll deal with him. We can't let him control us." Emily looked up, a flicker of something dangerous sparking in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "What if we eliminated the problem?" Daniel suggested cautiously, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. "If he wasn't around, we could be free." "Are you serious?" Emily gasped, shock mingling with a rush of adrenaline. "Just think about it. If it's just us against the world, we could start anew. No more pressure from him, no more lies." Daniel's voice was laced with urgency, but a part of him recoiled at the suggestion. Emily's expression shifted, a mixture of fear and excitement. "You know what? Maybe it's the only way. I can't keep living in fear of him." As the days passed, the idea festered in their minds. They met in secret, discussing the logistics of their dark plan. Each conversation drew them deeper into a web of deceit and desperation, where morality became a distant memory. The night before the trial began, they put their plan into action. Daniel arranged for a meeting with Robert under the pretense of discussing the case. They chose a secluded park, away from prying eyes. As dusk fell, casting shadows over the trees, they approached the designated spot where Robert waited, his demeanor casual, yet his eyes sharp. "Thanks for meeting me, Robert. I wanted to clear the air before the trial," Daniel said, feigning calm. "Let's get this over with," Robert replied curtly, his arms crossed. "What do you want?" But as they spoke, a plan had been set in motion. Hidden in Daniel's jacket was a small vial containing a potent poison. They had decided that Robert's death would appear like an accident, a tragic consequence of the stress from the trial. "Look, Robert," Daniel continued, maintaining his composure. "This trial is going to be tough on on everyone. I know you care about Emily, but you need to trust me. I'm going to do everything I can to help you." Robert raised an eyebrow, suspicion creeping into his expression. "Why are you being so friendly, Daniel? You have something up your sleeve." "No, I'm serious. I want what's best for Emily," Daniel pressed, stepping closer. In that moment, as Robert's attention faltered, Daniel's heart raced with anticipation and fear. He had rehearsed this countless times, but now that the moment was here, reality struck like a cold slap. As Robert opened his mouth to respond, Daniel acted, swiftly uncapping the vial and pushing it against Robert's mouth. "This is for Emily," he muttered, forcing the liquid into Robert's system. A moment of confusion passed over Robert's face, then terror. He staggered back, gasping for breath as the poison took effect. What have you done?" he choked out, collapsing to the ground. Emily watched from a distance, horror etched on her face. The reality of their actions hit her like a freight train, and the thrill that once filled her veins now felt like ice. "Daniel, what did you do?" she screamed, rushing to her father's side. But it was too late. Robert's eyes rolled back, and his body went limp. The park was shrouded in darkness, and for a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the city. As panic set in, Daniel pulled Emily away from the scene. "We have to go. We can't get caught," he urged, dragging her toward the exit. Emily felt numb, her mind racing as they fled into the night. What had they just done? Was this truly the freedom they had sought, or had they sealed their fates in blood? Daniel and Emily huddled in the back of his car, adrenaline coursing through their veins. But as the initial thrill faded, a chilling silence enveloped them. "What have we done?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The weight of their actions bore down on her, threatening to crush her spirit. The image of her father lying lifeless in the park haunted her. "We did what we had to do," Daniel replied, attempting to sound reassuring. "This is our chance to start fresh. No more interference from him." But Emily could hardly process his words. The reality of the murder began to settle in, each thought punctuated by the heavy thud of her heart. "We need to report it," she said suddenly, her voice a mix of defiance and desperation. "We can't just run away." "Are you insane?" Daniel snapped, his temper flaring. "If we go to the police, we're both going to prison. We need to be smart about this." As they drove, they concocted a plan to distance themselves from the scene. They would claim to have been elsewhere, present an alibi, and destroy any evidence connecting them to Robert's death. But even as they plotted, anxiety gnawed at their insides. Days passed, and the news of Robert Sanders's mysterious death sent shockwaves through the community. Daniel found himself at the center of speculation, the pressure mounting with every passing hour. Emily, too, felt the eyes of the world upon her, but they couldn't backtrack now. In the courtroom, Daniel presented himself as the steadfast attorney, expertly deflecting any questions that hinted at his connection to the case. But when a detective approached him with a simple question, "Where were you the night Robert died?" the facade cracked. He stammered, I had a meeting," but the detective's piercing gaze made it clear he was not convinced. Just when they thought they had evaded capture, the walls began to close in. Emily's growing paranoia led her to delete text messages, and Daniel's increasingly erratic behavior caught the attention of his colleagues. In a desperate attempt to distance themselves from their crime, they turned on each other. "Maybe it's time we go our separate ways," Emily suggested one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you betraying me?" Daniel's tone turned icy. The fractures in their relationship widened, and soon the police caught wind of Emily's increasing anxiety. A simple tip-off led them to investigate her further. When the detectives reviewed surveillance footage from the park, the truth began to unravel. Daniel was arrested first, his carefully constructed alibi crumbling under scrutiny. As the evidence mounted against him, Emily realized the gravity of their actions, knowing their once passionate affair had morphed into a nightmare. In the end, both faced the repercussions of their choices. Two lives forever altered by a single, irreversible act of desperation. Their dreams of freedom were replaced by the cold reality of prison bonds. The bond that once united them now shattered by betrayal and blood.